Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Crazy Amazing Humans podcast, where we highlight everyday humans doing crazy, amazing things. People who utilize their time, talents, and resources to give back, pay it forward, and make a difference. I'm Katrina Carlson.
And my name is Jefferson Denham. On today's episode, we want to share with you 3 inspirational stories that we found. One regarding some inventive entrepreneurs, another about an anything but average college graduation.
We're also speaking with filmmaker Jeff Werner, whose new film, Those Who Serve, is an important documentary shining light on the issue of veterans who come back from multiple tours of duty suffering from post-traumatic stress and the impact of PTS on their lives and the lives of others. We'll also be speaking with Mark Stillion, one of the veterans featured in the film.
And as always, we want to make sure we stay connected with you. Don't forget to write us at crazyamazinghumans@gmail.com to let us know your thoughts and comments. We'd also love to know about any crazy, amazing humans that you are aware of that you find inspirational.
And we also want to make sure that we're always giving you the most inspiring and uplifting stories and practical information. We are on a mission to inspire you and remind you that you are crazy amazing.
Part 1, calling all crazy, amazing humans.
Okay, so this first item is under the moniker Crazy Little Thing Called. It's from an article posted on goodnewsnetwork.org by Andy Corbley.
Right. A company called 4Ocean sells $20 plastic bracelets that are made out of a plastic pulled from the ocean. 4Ocean removes 1 pound of trash from the ocean per bracelet purchased. Wow. Cleanup efforts are currently underway in Florida, Bali, and Haiti, and now 4Ocean is expanding its presence into operations into Central America.
Fantastic. Can they come here too?
Yeah, right? Teach us something, please.
Yeah. The 4Ocean founders, Andrew Cooper and Alex Schultz, who were included in Forbes 30 Entrepreneurs Under 30 last year, said, "Our plan is not only to remove millions of pounds of plastic by leveraging innovative cleanup technologies, but to also stop plastic pollution at its source by working with local communities to change plastic consumption habits," Schultz said.
Under 30, you said.
Yes.
Under 30 years old. Upon opening its Central American operations, 4Ocean aims to employ more than 20 local workers. That's great. Utilize 6 trash collecting vessels as well as the 4Ocean mobile skimmer. In addition, they will install boom collection systems at large river mouths to minimize the amount of pollution that enters the ocean before it even gets to the ocean.
Wow.
Yay.
Okay, that's amazing. So they say in 1 week alone, 4Ocean's Haiti team removed 65,000 pounds of trash from the ocean and rivers.
Wow.
I just can't even.
65,000 pounds.
In total, after approximately 3 years, 4Ocean has reported that it is closing in on 8 million pounds of trash pulled from its various ocean cleanup sites.
4Ocean is
Now,
right. So
yeah, those are some crazy, amazing humans.
yay, you guys. All right. So the second story comes to us from AmsterdamNews.com, written by Cyril Josh Barker. And we call this Still Crazy After All These Years.
Still crazy amazing after all these years.
I will stand corrected. Both are true.
Both. In early December of 2019, 80-year-old Donzella Washington fulfilled her late husband's dreams for her obtaining her college degree in social work from Alabama A&M University in Huntsville, Alabama. She is the oldest person in the school's history to graduate.
Oh, come on. Okay, so Washington's story started when she met her husband in California at church. The two bought a farm and became foster parents to, get this, 30 children. 30 children. She eventually spent nearly 20 years working at a local bank, but wanted more.
Okay, that's great. While working at the bank, her husband always encouraged her to get her college degree. And the 30 foster children they took in grew up to become professionals, many of them. Yeah, including an attorney, a radiation technologist, and a professor. And after her husband died, Washington moved to Birmingham, Alabama suburb, and began taking a few classes at a nearby community college. A couple of classes soon turned into getting a scholarship at AAMU and earning her bachelor's degree in social work.
Oh, you go, girl. So she says, I want to inspire young people and even adults because it's never too late. You have a dream, please finish that dream. You can do it. You just have to believe in yourself.
That is fantastic.
Come on.
I love that. On graduation day, her daughter Kimberly was by her side to watch her mother walk across the stage, even helping her with her cap and gown. I'm going to cry a little.
Beautiful.
She is such a great example of commitment and strength and perseverance and dedication and compassion and passion. She exhibits all of that, said Kimberly.
Washington says that she might not be done yet, and her age isn't stopping her. She's considering continuing her education and obtaining her master's degree.
Wow. Fantastic. Okay. Inspired.
Part 2. Those Who Serve.
I just killed my friend and I don't even know why.
911 emergency.
In 30 seconds, everything just changed. 30 seconds.
I was lost in a combat mindset where I was back at war.
There is a significant minority of veterans who come home with post-traumatic stress, bringing their war home with them and acting out against their communities.
You will stop acting like a jerk.
It's difficult to understand the war hero who comes back and becomes a criminal.
After he came back from war, he still smelled dead bodies.
He started hitting his head with both hands.
I was blown up a couple times. I hit a couple of IEDs.
The DA is never going to understand that.
I felt he squeezed the trigger.
It was like you were looking into the eyes and they were hollow. You need to treat this. If you don't, the behavior's not going to change.
We do a good job of training them up, but we don't do a very good job of bringing them back down.
The question is, should murder by someone who suffers from PTSD be treated differently than someone who doesn't?
He didn't look good when he came home. He wasn't the same child.
Why do such strong individuals crumble?
This case should never have happened.
When you're aiming this K-bar knife toward your friend, are you trying to kill him?
PTSD is a handicap for the defendant.
I know in my heart that he didn't mean to do that.
Put it again in session.
With PTSD, we may have a time bomb.
I don't want to be remembered for the things that I've done over the past 5 years.
So life is going to change, I hope.
I want to be somebody who's remembered for the things that I do the next 30 years.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give?
Our military take an oath to serve. And I think we should take an oath to serve them.
Our guest today is Emmy Award-winning documentary filmmaker, editor, director, producer, Jeff Werner. Jeff's career has spanned over 4 decades in the film industry. He's worked on projects with such diverse subject matter as Mormon Comedy Troupe, The Art and Life of artist Francesca Woodman, several Barbra Streisand movies, and was a producer on the award-winning film The Heart of Nuba.
His latest project is entitled Those Who Serve, the trailer of which we just played. The feature-length documentary is a compelling and personal look at 3 psychologically wounded American combat vets who have committed crimes since returning to civilian life, and focuses on how that plays out through the criminal justice system. Jeff Werner, welcome to the Crazy Amazing Humans podcast.
Thank you very much. Good to be here. I'm a little bit shocked by the 4 decades, but I guess that's what it's been.
Wow.
That's nuts.
That's awesome.
That's a long time.
And so going all the way back to when you were teaching 4th and 5th graders in Harlem, New York. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I'd left college and had always wanted to do some kind of educational work of some sort. And there was a program back in those days that was called Urban Corps, and it was set up for college graduates who did not have a degree in teaching to get their master's while they taught. And we actually team taught. There would be 2 of us in a classroom. And I loved it. It was a major part of my life, and I got my master's, and I taught for 2 years in Harlem and had 4th and 5th graders. Actually, the interesting thing, we took the 4th grade class with us to 5th grade, so which is an unusual thing. Nice. So the kids had the same teacher in the same classroom for 2 years running, and I think it helped them sort of be open to more learning because there wasn't anything new going on.
Right.
They knew what
Trust.
5th grade was going to be. They knew what the class was going to be like. They knew their classmates and they knew their teacher. Anyway, and then they had a cutback in funding in New York at that time, and the union, the teachers union, then got rid of, by seniority, everybody who didn't have any seniority. We had no seniority, and so we were let go, and then I moved to San Francisco and taught in San Francisco for a while. There was an organization there called the Multicultural Institute, which was a unique school for that time that Mayor Aliotta had actually set up. And that was the idea with that was kids from all different cultures would go to the school. It was a public school, but they were all different cultures. And the morning were academics, typical reading, writing, arithmetic. And in the afternoon, there were cultural studies. And
Wow.
so that was really interesting. And then I got into, I wrote a script and decided to get into film.
Wow. So that's amazing. First of all, you saying that you wanted to be teaching in some way. I would say, Kat, that he's still teaching through his
Yeah,
films.
that's true.
So how did you make that transition? I mean, from teaching to filmmaking? I mean, okay, so this is a two-parter. And then your life experiences, teaching and otherwise. How does that inform your filmmaking now?
You know, I would say that ideally when I got into film or when I thought about getting into film, I was hoping that it was going to be an educational / political experience. I kind of had from probably my junior year in college taken a political bent and was interested in trying to promote certain ideas in terms of society and improving the lot of people who have less and whatnot. And so there was a political motivation behind my teaching, and also in terms of when I went into filmmaking, I actually had hoped, as you pointed out, Jefferson, that there would be an educational aspect to making these movies or making movies that were about something. I wrote a script that was a amateur script. I knew somebody in New York. I was living in San Francisco at the time, but I knew somebody in New York who knew this guy, Douglas Sirk. And Douglas Sirk was a prominent German director who came to Hollywood in the 40s, directed a lot of wonderful melodramas with Lana Turner and whatnot. And I asked that person to send Douglas Sirk my script and to see what he thought of the script. And the script was this really impressionistic, crazy, silly, political thesis. He gave the script to Douglas Sirk. Douglas Sirk said, "Please don't make me read this script. It's not going to be any good. And I would never advise anybody to ever go into the business anyway. So, just don't make me do this." And my friend came back and said he really says, don't do this. He doesn't want to do it. And I said, well, just try to get some kind of, so I can get an inkling as to whether I'm in the ballpark. Anyway, he persevered. Douglas Sirk read it. Douglas Sirk said, it's actually not so bad. And I took that as a endorsement.
Oh, yeah, I'm in.
I moved down to Los Angeles and got into film.
Oh, that's interesting. So now we're here. You've just made this film, Those Who Serve. It's definitely a compelling and timely topic. What drew you to this subject?
I had done a film called Camp Scott Ladies for MTV, which was a film about criminal camp. And Camp Scott's the name of the camp, and it was for girls who had committed crimes anywhere from drug dealing to assault. And but teenage kids, teenage girls. And we had been introduced to the camp there, and we were doing a film. This is another filmmaker friend from Washington, D.C., and I were making this film. And somebody connected to that film mentioned to me that this gentleman, Paul Frees, who used to work at Public Counsel, which is a free legal counsel here in town, wanted to take me down to see this veterans court in Orange County. A woman named Judge Lindley ran this court where they had veterans come in who had committed crimes, and instead of being punished and sent to prison, they were given treatment, and they were given mentors that mentored them. And we went down there one day, and it was an incredibly moving and touching day and experience in the courtroom. And on my way back, I talked to Paul and I said, you know, what happens to some of these veterans who commit something that's not a misdemeanor or a minor crime? What if it's a capital crime? And he said, well, I have no idea really how that would be handled because capital crimes are not covered by veterans courts. And then I found out that there are veterans courts all throughout the country and that they're growing by leaps and bounds, fortunately, because it's something that's obviously very necessary. But anyway, I thought if I could find a capital crime done by a veteran who was also going to plead innocent or not guilty by reason of insanity, or were using his PTSD or traumatic brain injury as part of his defense, that could be very interesting. And when I went into looking into it and I saw the numbers of veterans returning who are suffering psychological trauma from their combat, it was astounding. If we have 3 million or so who have been fighting in these wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, there are about 600,000 who have returned with traumatic brain, well, actually 300,000 with traumatic brain injury, but 600,000 with PTS. So, and they very often are not treated and don't get treatment, and very often therefore wind up committing crimes. So I thought that was an interesting premise for approaching an issue and a problem in the country that people don't really know about, bringing it to light, and hopefully getting a discussion started about how we can improve the criminal justice system to address these veterans who have risked their lives for us and in turn come back unalterably changed by their combat trauma and then wind up committing crimes against us.
Wow. And so that's a story that most people, you know, I think when you take public opinion polls, we've seen that, you know, everyone's for veterans, of course.
Yeah.
But are we willing then, as you're articulating, to do what's necessary to help them then when they come back? And there was a compelling scene in your film about that. We're curious, why did you go through, because this film is funded through Kickstarter, right?
Part of it is funded through Kickstarter, yes. I basically shot and directed and produced the filming of the film, the production of the film. So that was just my own, you know, blood, sweat, and tears. The Kickstarter enabled us, along with some other contributions, to actually do the post-production of the film.
Gotcha. And so that whole process of going through Kickstarter, I'm imagining that means that you're keeping the controls. It's more of an independent.
I would say, yeah, it's a very independent, with a lot of help from a lot of people, but very independent films. Which any kind of independent documentary these days, with the Marvel, franchise and that kind of stuff going on, it's very tough to make these days. Although there are many, many more platforms than there ever used to be. So one's hopeful that your film will get out somehow.
Right. And so you've had to do this because you have a passion for it, because you care about the issue. And when we wanted to make you a crazy, amazing human, and you were like, me? What, me? I'd be so humble. You're like, look, I'm a filmmaker. I'm not an activist. But I just wanted you to address that and why your distinction of that. But then again, you've said you want to educate. Just tell us a little bit about that.
I would say I'm a filmmaker as a filmmaker, and I'm trying to make good films that enlighten and move people. As a private person, I'm an activist.
Okay,
so I'm
right.
separating the two things. I don't believe the films should be necessarily propagandizing anything or promoting my side necessarily.
Your side.
I believe if presented fairly, that the audience will see my side.
Right.
They may not buy it, but they'll at least see the side.
They'll see the side.
Yeah, and this is like in this particular film, this is like a film this is a problem that's not new. So there very often people come up to me after they've seen it and they said, I think my dad had PTS. And I think my grandfather may even had it when he fought. Because this is something that's been around since Homer. I mean, Homer wrote about the psychological traumas of battle. And we used to call it, I think in the 17th century, the French called it maladie du pays, which was like a homesickness. The Spanish called it like estar roto, being broken. But what they were talking about was a psychological issue that was then shell shock and then combat fatigue for World War II and Korean War. And only like in 1980 did PTSD become actually a term that we realized probably a third of Vietnam veterans went through.
And we just didn't know. So that's
we didn't know, and we
ignored
it, and we treated veterans so horribly. I mean, after World War I, very often after every war, there is a increase in crime from returning veterans. It's documented this is the case. In World War I, we ignored them completely and very often put them into insane asylums, or places where people were just treated horrendously. Wow. It was the beginning, actually, of the GI Bill started actually originally, the sort of the beginning embryo of it started after World War I to be finalized after World War II. But this has been around for a long, long time and ignored for a long, long time, either because of the stigma. Veterans feel that they don't want to be known for it, obviously. It affects their careers as soldiers. But also I think the military has not wanted to promote that idea that some of their heroes are returning home and becoming criminals. So it's something that's not, way out in the open in terms of the public, but needs to be.
So these are things that I certainly didn't know. And we were curious, what other things, and for our audience too, what are some things that you discovered in the making of this film that people just don't know about? I mean, that's some of it, obviously, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it has to do with the recent, we have to establish that the Vietnam veterans really went through hell and suffered this and were pretty much ignored for it, which is our fault. Nowadays, there's so many different factors that lead to this continuing and increased number of people suffering, veterans suffering from psychological problems after a return from combat. So you have wars that have been going on nonstop, basically, since 2003 in Iraq and Afghanistan. You have numerous deployments. So veterans who have done numerous deployments, and there's proof that with every increased deployment, the greater chance of some kind of psychological trauma from combat. You have the ability nowadays to, because of the medical advances, you can get into the field of combat and save soldiers who used to pass away and die. Those people are coming back with traumatic brain injuries or severed legs or having seen horror in combat, but saved themselves because we're able to evacuate them so quickly and deal with them actually even on the field with medical advances. So all these factors are kind of adding to making this actually something that's not just a small issue, but something that's actually, as we bring soldiers home from Iraq and Afghanistan, it's going to only be more and more young men and women who are coming back with traumas.
Yeah, and here we want to bring in someone who was in one of your subjects of your documentary, Mark Stillion, and we're going to show a clip with him in your film right now before we bring him in.
Great.
The first deployment was very intense. It was very, I was blown up a couple times. I hit a couple IEDs, roadside bomb, basically. I don't really talk about much of it. I don't even like to think about it, let alone talk about it, really. I've experienced, firing a main gun round into a group of military-age males and destroying a target that way. Basically, I saw war. I saw war at the front line.
I do hereby publicly honor and commend Lance Corporal Mark Allen Stillion for his service to our nation in the United States Marine Corps.
After the Marine Corps, I took on contracting jobs with the Department of Defense, and I went the first time and I felt more comfortable in Iraq than I did back at home. I felt like I knew what to do there.
Look at this guy right here. See somebody like him when you grow up, okay? Amen.
I just felt more comfortable there.
Okay, so that was a clip from Those Who Serve, showing a part of Marine Mark Stillion's story in the film. Mark Stillion, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Let me just start with telling you how grateful we are for your service to our country. There is no greater sacrifice than putting your life on the line for your country, and we could never repay you for that. So thank you.
Thank you for your support.
Of course. And let's see. So you served in the U.S. Marine Corps. You've done multiple tours of duty and left as a sergeant. You were nominated Veteran of the Day. And in November 2007, the Sebring mayor awarded you a plaque of proclamation for your service to your country.
Wow.
Okay.
Kat, there's more.
Yes, there is
You
more.
were also a certified combat lifesaver. You received the Iraq Campaign Medal with 2 Bronze Service Stars, the Combat Action Ribbon, Service Deployment Ribbon, 2nd Award, and National Defense Service Medal. You also earned the Rifle Qualification Badge Expert 2nd Award and Pistol Qualification Badge Sharpshooter. Well, I think I should just make an action figure out of you.
Yes, you should.
So, Mark, okay, so you're from Sebring. You're from a town in Ohio named Sebring, Ohio, obviously.
That's correct.
I'm also from Ohio.
Yeah.
I was born in Worcester. I don't know if you know where that is.
That's not too far away.
Hey, go Buckeyes.
Yeah, Buckeyes.
And you're married to OHIO. And we're going to do the script Ohio in just one second. But what was your life growing up in Ohio?
My life growing up was pretty exciting for the most part. I grew up next to my 2 older brothers. For the most part, we hung out, just the 3 of us, just normal kid stuff, I guess, street hockey, stuff like that. When I turned 14, I began traveling abroad, going on mission trips and stuff like that. So I did that all through my high school years. And
Where'd you go? You went to some interesting countries all over.
Yeah, so I went to, the first trip I went to was in South America. I went to Panama with an organization from Texas called Global Expeditions. And after I came back from that trip, I was just completely, my life had just been changed because of the culture shock that I experienced there. Just a whole different way of life that I'd never even known about. And I felt the urge to want to help, to be of service to other people. So I went on another mission trip to Australia and New Zealand the following summer. And I was gone for a month that summer. And after that, I went to Uganda, and we did a 10-day medical mission in the hills of Jinja, Uganda.
Wow.
This is all before he was 18.
This is all before I was
crazy.
That's amazing. And then what drew you to the military and joining the military? It sounds like you have a heart for service,
Yeah, I was actually planning a trip to Sri Lanka right after the tsunami hit. When I enlisted in the Marine Corps, I canceled that trip to go to the Marine Corps instead, just for the same reason, just I wanted to be of service. And I felt like, I've always had a heart for other people, to help other people. And, I did it, in my hometown. I ran blood drives, food drives and stuff like that. And I continued that in the Marine Corps. I felt like that was the best place. After 9/11, I felt like the Marine Corps was the best option for me.
What year did you join?
I enlisted in the Marine Corps in 2005. Okay. And I left for boot camp 10 days after I graduated high school in 2006.
Were you still 17 at that point?
I was 17 when I enlisted.
Wow.
Yep.
So, okay, in the Marines, I think we know, the audience probably knows, one tour of duty, and we were talking about multiple tours of duty. One tour of duty would be intense. You did 4. Hold on. I want you to obviously tell us about that, because that blows my mind.
Yeah.
Can you give us a picture of what kind of pressures and stresses you were experiencing while you were deployed, or even in the aftermath when you got out of the military?
Yeah, leading up to my first deployment, I, was treading upon new ground. I had no idea what to expect. And the first deployment, when I went to Fallujah in 2007, was the worst deployment that I ever experienced. The enemy activity was very kinetic every day, and we took we had a lot of incidents during that deployment. Actually, after I came back from that deployment, everybody in my family noticed changes in me after I came home that I had never really noticed in myself. So every deployment is different. The second deployment I went to Iraq was a little bit less intense. but nonetheless was still in a combat zone. It was still in combat action theater. And the third and fourth deployment were actually as a civilian contractor with the Department of Defense. The third one, I went to Baghdad as a guard supervisor, and the fourth deployment, I was in Afghanistan for a year as a UAV operator.
Wow.
So,
but always surrounded by this intense threat of violence.
Every deployment had its own threat, but there was always a constant imminent danger everywhere I went. It just differed from place to place.
So our audience is probably familiar with the term PTSD, but I understand now it's referenced mostly as post-traumatic stress, or PTS, to sort of take the disorder aspect of it, because it's just, this is what you're experiencing, correct, Mark? So you've got the multiple tours of duty issue, and that would, can you guys expound a little bit about how that might, create worse post-traumatic stress, these multiple tours, and how many, like the percentage of people who suffer from that?
Well, I think they've been statistically proven that more soldiers return with psychological injuries than actually wind up being killed. There are more of psychologically injured veterans than fatalities in a war, and they come back with various different types of combat trauma. Mark had, particularly as we describe in the film, a complex PTSD situation, and he was afraid to ride in buses, and he was paranoid about people and paranoid about wherever he went. And he could describe a little bit better, but it involves night terrors and horrible nightmares and flashbacks. But you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, like I said earlier, it was very difficult for me to notice any of my own PTSD symptoms, and when I did notice it, it's not something I would want to come out and openly admit to. There's a very a negative stigma that's attached to that for veterans, and so when I did start to realize that what was going on in my life, I didn't really come out forward and just ask for help right away. I tried to deal with it on my own by self-medicating, but really the main symptoms that I was experiencing were night terrors, flashbacks, hyperarousal. I couldn't be in any crowded places. I couldn't sit with my back to the door. I couldn't ride on a bus due to an experience that I had in Fallujah in my first deployment in 2007, which just really put a fear inside of me that wouldn't even I was forced to get on a bus once, and I had an anxiety attack, and I couldn't ride. So ever since then, I just gave up on it, until later. But PTSD symptoms can range, from a lot of different things, depending on the veteran. For me, that's basically what they were. And the self-medicating I was talking about, that was my go-to thing for my night terrors. I started using street narcotics so I didn't have to go to sleep at night, and that would take care of that.
So it would keep you up all night.
Keep me awake, yeah.
Uh-huh.
The thing that I found, and that I found hard to even appreciate when I was first starting the film, it sounds so melodramatic, the idea that you have flashbacks and you have night terrors and you can't go into a bus, and a loud backfire from a car all of a sudden makes you hit the ground, which are all reactions to this trauma, this combat trauma. Mm-hmm. And I initially was not skeptical, but it was like, it just felt too movie-like. It felt too melodramatic. And it turns out that they're so real and so true and so exactly what goes on with the psychological damage that has happened to these men and women.
In the Marine Corps, and all branches of the service, really, from the time you enter boot camp all the way until you get out, you're constantly drilled, certain protective measures to, when something happens, do this. And it becomes second nature to us, We're trained in boot camp for, in the Marine Corps, we go through 13 weeks of basic training. And during that 13 weeks, we are completely brainwashed, and we're completely transformed into a killing machine, basically. And what they don't do is they don't, we talk about this in the film a little bit. They don't bring us back down from that high level of hyperarousal that kept us safe in combat. It's actually working against us here. And so we are, just using the skills that we were trained to survive in combat, and those are still clicked on when we come back home. They don't do anything to bring us back down. So that's where a lot of us are running into the problems that we're running into today.
So let me segue off of that and just ask both of you. I'll start with you, Jeff. With Mark and the other two veterans in your film, what are the actual legal challenges and realities of trying to deal with crimes committed by returning soldiers with post-traumatic stress?
Well, one of the things that, one of the problems is on the veteran side, that they don't report themselves as having problems, and so they don't seek help. Very often, if they wind up self-medicating, I mean, the typical kind of thing is that in order to deal with a psychological problem, they look for help somehow without going for help, and they take drugs to try to either help them sleep or not sleep or whatever it might be. And that very often, that alcohol or that drug abuse very often can lead you to criminal activity. One of the points I do want to make also, though, is these are guys and girls who went overseas or who went into the military to protect our country and to sacrifice potentially their lives, like Mark, who had the best of intentions and who went there for
all the
really
right
good
reasons.
things and for right reasons. And to no fault of their own, wind up doing their job. But part of that job is this training, which is important because that's how they stay alive and that's how they can fight. But part of that job is also that psychological trauma that they have to face in killing, in seeing buddies being killed, all the horrors of war. That's part of what they get that they didn't necessarily sign up for, and when they come back, they pay the price for it. And we have to be conscious of that. In the criminal justice system, the defense part of the criminal justice system has to be educated and informed about this problem that's coming into our criminal justice system. Very often, not only the defense, but also the jurors, our public, have to be informed, because PTSD, for many people, is like a get-out-of-jail-free card if you're going to claim that as a reason or as a defense. It's not. It's actually a way to address the actual problem so that it can be treated, and so the person, instead of throwing them into a cage and having them come back out the same person, if not worse, you're actually treating the person so they can come back into society. The melding of the veterans back into society is the goal, I would think, of any society. And in order to do that, the criminal justice system has to be alerted to this particular part of criminality that's taking place.
For sure. And that's something that it's so important that you're bringing awareness to. And it is hard for people to understand that. I happen to understand I had post-traumatic concussive disorder, where I've spent years dealing with repercussions after having just a concussion. I can't imagine, because I've heard that if you're getting a concussion or some kind of concussive trauma while you're in stress, it's even, more emphasized. I mean, we could go into all of those things, but I wanted to ask you, Mark, because you're here on this show, Crazy Amazing Humans, and we're really wanting to inspire our audience and help our audience understand how people who do go through hard things or who are helping people how do you get through a day?
I came back from my last deployment in 2013 from Afghanistan. For the first time in my life, 6 months after I came back, I began using street narcotics. I'd never used drugs or alcohol my entire life leading up to that point. And so that in itself was a red flag. It should have been a red flag to me right away. I didn't really catch on to it as quickly. So what happened was I began self-medicating with street drugs, and within 6 months, I was selling the drugs to support my own habit. And that behavior continued for another, year and a half to 2 years before I was ultimately arrested by the LAPD for a drug crime. And I was forced to face my consequences, and at that point, I was so lost in the grips of my addiction that I didn't really realize how bad my life had spiraled out of control. But the day that I got arrested was probably the best day of my life, because it was actually the one way that I got rescued. Instead, I look at it as being rescued, not arrested type thing.
I love that. Yeah. That is fantastic.
So really, I was placed into the Veterans Court program in LA County, and which is a great Veterans Court program with Judge Tynan. I just graduated that court program on January 6th.
Oh,
so
congratulations.
finally, yeah, it was a long. I've been in that program for quite a while, but
we're going to be adding that to the film.
Oh, really?
That's wonderful.
Fabulous.
And what did they do? What did you do in that program?
So the Veterans Court program here, anyway, is set up so that veterans who need rehabilitation or PTSD treatment can be sent to the West LA VA domiciliary or other treatment centers to receive the treatment that they need. And instead of throwing the veterans into a cell for their crimes, they're given the opportunity to get help and seek treatment for the root cause of what caused the criminal behavior in the first place. Mm-hmm. Most of the veterans that I know who are in a similar situation that I'm in are not career criminals. They don't come from bad families or bad hometown. They're just like me. They came with good
a good background.
Yeah, good background.
Good intentions.
Good intentions.
Right, good intentions. And it's just when we got out of the military, there's a consistent theme in all of us is that we all came back different people. In all my legal issues, I've had several people write me letters, and almost every letter that I've read, they all say the same thing. Mark, when he came back home, he was a changed person. He was a changed person. And so, yeah.
And if you think about it, how could you not be?
How could you not be changed?
Exactly right. Well, Jeff, so let me ask you, through this process and all the people that you've encountered and the time you spent on this issue, what can you see that we can actually say, we can celebrate? What are some good things that are happening? Certainly awareness through your film and other ways, but so what are some other good things that you've seen that we can maybe celebrate right now?
Well, I think one of the things that's happening is that these veterans courts that Mark was part of are proliferating throughout the country. There are, I think, over 400 now doing this kind of restorative justice, I guess you could call it, because they're restoring the veterans and they're meting out justice at the same time. There are also in several states efforts to rewrite the sentencing laws for veterans, so that, again, like I was saying, where the defense and the judges and the prosecution and the jurors have to be educated about the fact that there's something different here than the usual situation. And so they're trying to, and I think in Minnesota and Virginia and Florida, Kentucky, I think as well, they're rewriting their sentencing laws for veterans who might have committed crimes but suffer from PTSD or traumatic brain injury. There are also, one of the things that's happened is that we never really take stock of who is admitted into a prison who might be a veteran. So there's really no concrete number. There's really no exact statistic. There's no data as to who are veterans in our criminal justice system. There are efforts now to try to identify those people and to give those people defense attorneys. And there are programs out there and there are organizations out there trying to raise money for those defense attorneys, or at least to give those veterans information about where they are in the criminal justice system.
What are some of those organizations you like?
Well, a couple of the organizations that off the top of my head I can think of was like the one that I was in, for instance. There's a lot of these organizations that are popping up that are seeking out to help the veterans that are suffering from these things that we're going through. The program that I was in is from the PTSD Foundation of America. It's located in Houston, Texas. I was at Camp Hope. It's a 6 to 8 month program. Intensive PTSD treatment program. It's all peer-to-peer. That's the best part about that program is it's all combat veterans I'm there with. A lot of the guys I served with over in this, same country, same time, same branch of service and everything. So that's one. There's another program out of New York I know of called the New York Veterans Defense Program that does help veterans. They they take certain cases on each year for veterans that are involved with criminal activity, and they give them lawyers pro bono, and they take the case into court and defend them and everything. And a lot of good resources come out of that. So there's a lot of programs like that all over the country that are popping up, despite all the problems that we've been having.
That's wonderful.
I mean, I can't say, because I can't tell you specifically the name of the organization that's here in Los Angeles that is helping to provide lawyers, defense lawyers for veterans. But I can tell you there's an organization called Justice for Veterans out of, I believe, out of Virginia. And they are primarily involved in creating and promoting veterans courts around the country. And there's another organization called Veterans Defense Project in Minnesota, which is also involved in helping state legislatures rewrite these sentencing laws.
Fabulous.
That's fantastic. And Mark, I just wanted to talk a little bit about how you've started a company, the Drone, and can you just tell people how you've moved forward? And
so after I started getting the help that I needed, I started to actually make a turnaround. I began to make progress in my life. Of course, I'm currently enrolled in college. I'm getting ready to start college classes in the fall. I started my own drone business about a year and a half ago, called Persistent Aerial Productions, and I basically, it's along the same lines of what I was doing with the Department of Defense in Afghanistan. I just kind of took that and molded it into my own business. I flew UAVs in Afghanistan to spy on the enemy, and so that's where I got the idea from. And I did some research, and there's a huge market for it. So that's what I began to work on lately. Is just getting my business off the ground. And
is it out of Los Angeles?
Currently it is.
Tell me the name of it again so everyone can hear it.
It's called Persistent Aerial Productions.
Nice.
And it's Mark's work and his company that supplied the aerial photography that we use in the film.
Is it fun to fly these things?
It is fun. And that's why I like doing it so much, because they always say, if you do something that you love doing, you won't work a day in your life.
Amen,
and I love doing it. So
that's fantastic.
You're gonna have to see the film to appreciate this, but you'll see Mark as a different man in the film.
Yeah,
I mean, for me, it's remarkable. I haven't seen him now for 6, 7, 8 months or so, but he was always the man who could start a company that specializes in aerial photography and make it work. But when you see him in the film, you'll see a totally different man, and this is who he really is.
Right.
That's so amazing.
Wow.
I'm so glad that program was successful and that you're on the road to complete recovery.
Yep.
And just circling back to the film, just give us the pitch for our audience to watch your film. And
well, I mean, the film is, biasedly, I guess, the film is 3 remarkable stories about 3 remarkable guys. It's basically a courtroom drama in a way, because we got incredible access to 2 murder trials in the courtroom, which we follow from beginning to end. And you have 3 different stories about 3 different kinds of veterans with 3 different kinds of traumatic events that happened to them and combat trauma, and how they work their way through the justice system. So it's a kind of a drama and a documentary and a heartfelt kind of family story too, because of one of the veterans who's in there. Their family has to go through that. That's the other, those are the other victims and the costs, in addition to money and revenue from the state and whatnot. But the cost to families of these veterans who come back changed and wounded.
Right.
It's a substantial cost.
A couple kids, right? Let's see.
Yeah. Well, speaking of families, if I may just interject, you are a grandfather.
I am a grandfather.
Hey, congratulations on that.
Thank you very much.
So we just are so thankful you guys are here. And Jeff, I wanted to say, I was saying this before, that given your story and how you were teaching 4th and 5th graders in Harlem, and then you moved to San Francisco and you're teaching cultural awareness, that spirit permeates your work, whether you're a filmmaker or not, but certainly in this film. We've both enjoyed seeing the film.
Yeah, we love the film.
In fact, there's a song that we have in the film. We were so
You
inspired.
let us take a stab at writing a song for the film. We're
And
ever
great.
so grateful.
And we were so inspired by your work,
yeah.
and that's so it came out. So I just want to say thank you for bringing your heart and soul into this project.
Thank you very much.
And just the men and women featured in this film are of great courage, like you, Mark. We, again, are just so honored to have you here today, both of you, honored and privileged, and thank you for your service to our country.
Thank you very much.
And beyond the work you're doing now.
Absolutely. And so make sure if you can, go see this film, Those Who Serve. So it's being made and marketed independently, please check out the Kickstarter page because that has got a great backstory on what man, and your Facebook page as well.
Those Who Serve.
Those Who Serve on Facebook. Links to both of those will be on our website.
We're pulling for you.
Thank you.
Exactly.
Appreciate it.
Thank you both so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank
you for having me.
He's not the same child. Those days are gone. He's walked alone a long while, wondering where he belongs. Nobody really knows what the world is gonna throw your way. Only time will say. Seen him swim against the tide, seen him dream, I've seen him fly, and then fall back to earth again. And so the river flows, so the river flows, so the river flows.
All right, so that's our podcast. We want to thank filmmaker Jeff Werner and Marine veteran Mark Stillion from the documentary Those Who Serve for being with us today, sharing their story, and enlightening us on a very powerful and important issue. If you've enjoyed today's podcast and you think it would be helpful for someone you know, please be a crazy, amazing human and let them know about us. And if you know of someone who's specifically suffering from PTS, you will find links on our YouTube channel below this episode.
A couple of quick reminders. We definitely want to hear from you and stay connected. So make sure and sign up for our newsletter by sending us an email at crazyamazinghumans@gmail.com. That's crazyamazinghumans, all one word, at gmail.com. We'd also love to hear your comments, questions, and suggestions.
In fact, if you know of a story about a crazy, amazing human that's making a difference in the lives around them, please let us know about them. We just might highlight them on our next podcast.
Right. So make sure to subscribe to the Crazy Amazing Humans podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We've also videotaped the podcasts, so you can check us out on the Crazy Amazing Humans YouTube channel.
That's right. And most of all, we want to make sure to thank you for being with us today. Remember that every little kindness has the potential to create crazy, amazing human experiences, one person at a time.
So this week, we want to encourage you to find one thing that you can do to extend kindness and love in the world. I'm Jefferson Denham.
And I'm Katrina Carlson. See you next time on the Crazy Amazing Humans podcast.